And I just want to start by expressing gratitude. I want to first thank all of you for being here to attend a talk on mental health and resiliency. I also want to thank the vendors being here, showing the resources that we do have available. I mean, that's one of the biggest obstacles when it comes to mental health is, what are my resources? And I hope that you got a chance to meet with all of them today and see that there are some wonderful resources available to, for all of us, our children, ourselves, and it's great to see. So I want to thank the vendors. I also want to thank the Advancing Healthier Wisconsin for funding tonight's event. I want to thank them for funding this. This is an awesome opportunity to get together and have this dialogue and discussion around this area. I'm very honored to be here. This is something that I love to talk about. It's something I'm very passionate about. My background is, I've been in the mental health field for 18 years. I've worked as a mental health provider, all in higher education, and I love this work. I'm very passionate about it. And I've done a lot of work just one-on-one in therapy sessions with individuals. But over the last 10 years, as we all know, we're in a mental health crisis. I said, there's got to be a better way. We've got to start to look at different things here when it comes to mental health to really solve this. And one of the things that I've done is over the last 10 years, I have obsessively, and I will tell you this, obsessively have kind of studied the science and practice of well-being and really looking at proactive, preventative ways of kind of approaching mental health and well-being. I think in mental health at times, and there may be some people that disagree with me on this, is that we tend to wait for people to be in crisis to receive care. I don't think that that's always the best solution. Right? I think that's like trying to teach someone how to swim when they're drowning. And I like to kind of look at ways of maybe moving upstream, giving people the skills, the tools to really help them improve their positive mental health prior to that. Now, is that going to prevent all mental illness? No, it's not. We need reactive responsive services. We absolutely need them. We need more of them. But we can't just kind of, continue to just say that's where we're going to put all our money, that's where we're going to put all our resources in thinking that things are going to get different. I'm all for those services. I'm all for medication at times. Yet, I don't think we're going to medicate our way out of this problem either. If we could, we would have already been doing so. So, my goal today is just to kind of tell you, number one, I'm going to give you some statistics of where we are when it comes to youth mental health. And these statistics, I'm sure none of you are going to sit here and be, holy smokes, like we are in a mental health crisis. And then I'm going to talk about kind of some of the things that we need to perhaps be looking at to do things differently. What can we do as educators, as providers, as parents, as caregivers? What are things that we can do that can improve positive mental health for ourselves and for our loved ones? Right? These are skills that, regardless, I say they should be taught from womb to tomb, as young as possible to as old as possible. Right? I love getting in with children and people that are working with children because that is an important time. We know that the earlier the better. Also, I've done a lot of work with older adults, and guess what? They also can benefit from these skills that we're going to be talking about when it comes to resiliency. So, my goal tonight is, number one, all of you walk out of here with one little nugget. One little nugget. Like, realistically, I'm not sitting here going to make claims that everything is, but if you can walk out of here with one little thing and do things differently, I've done my job. And there's two sayings that I always kind of go back to. Any difference can make a big difference. And little by little, a little becomes a lot. So that's kind of what I want you to kind of be in the back of your mind tonight as we kind of go through this. The other thing is, there's a lot of wisdom in this room. Right? So if there's things that I bring up that you want to add to, or that you say, I've had some positive experiences, or if you say, I've tried this and it hasn't, this is the opportunity to do this. As a collective group in here, asking questions, having these important conversations, because we don't do this enough. We really don't. This is one of the problems, is we're not getting together, talking about this topic enough, and finding solutions together. So, I want to make sure that we do so tonight. So, I'm a mindfulness teacher. Right? This is what I do. I teach a mindfulness course at the university. I do mindfulness workshops all over the place. And at the university, anytime I do a meeting or I do a workshop, one of the things I will say is, we're going to arrive. Because I think mindfulness is really one of the most vital, important skills we can teach our children and ourselves, especially when it comes to resiliency. I'll get into that a little bit longer. But what I do is, I'm going to invite you to just experience this. Right? Is that you're all here in body, but what I'm going to ask you to do is arrive in body and mind. So this is an invitation. You don't have to, but I encourage you to. If you want to just kind of settle in, and what I usually suggest is feet on the floor, hands in a comfortable position. And I invite you to close your eyes. You don't need to, but sometimes it just allows you to kind of go inward. And I'm just going to kind of guide you in an arrival. So, if you want to, you can just kind of settle in. And I always like to say is just start by being where your feet are. Right? Just be where your feet are. And I don't know, but I'm sure many of you have just gone all day, being busy. And all I'm going to ask you to do is just give yourself the permission to just, instead of do, just be. Be present. You don't need to think about the past. You don't need to worry what's to come. Just give yourself the permission to be in this moment. And I'm sure many of you, the mind is already wandered, because that's what that thing does, right? And just being aware of the mind wanders and continue to bring it back to the present moment, to the here and now, over and over again. Just allow your awareness to settle on the breath, something that we do thousands and thousands of times a day. Just breathing in, and eventually breathing out. And you don't need to manipulate the breath in any way. Just allow it to flow. But just really be intentional and mindful about the breath. Breathing in and breathing out. Again, if the mind wanders, being aware of the mind wanders and continue to bring it back over and over again. Now just allow your awareness to settle on the body, this incredible thing that we have so much of. Just kind of scan the body from the top of the head to the tips of the toes. And I always like to say, it's just put the welcome mat out. You don't need to change anything. Just notice, perhaps, what your body is feeling. Again, if the mind wanders, continue to bring it back over and over again. And now, if you would, I just encourage you, invite you to take one really long, perhaps the longest inhale that you've taken today, breathing in through the nostrils, and your longest exhale you've taken today, all through the nostrils. If the eyes are closed, you can open them. Begin to wiggle the fingers, the toes. If you need to, take a stretch overhead. Oh, thank you for arriving. Before we get, I always like to say, and there is no judgment, would anyone just comment on how that short little experience was? For some, it may be really wonderful. Other people may say that's the worst 3 minutes of my life. What was that like for people? Relaxing, thank you. Yeah. What else? Yeah. You would be the first. Yeah, so you notice the tiredness at times, and for people at times when they close their eyes, or they're not just doing, they're just being what the body will do, right? All that tells you is you need more sleep. I'm going to be getting into that. Others. What else was that like?
It was a big shift.
Yeah, big shift. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Just at times, just giving ourselves the permission to be. That's one of the sayings I like to say is we're human beings, not human doers. And at times there's this pressure, this pressure to always just be doing something instead of just being. and I think this is one of the things where mindfulness is very important, is just the pause, the break, the recharge, the centering, right? And I think all of us in here are models of that, to be aware of that. So thank you for participating in that. I'm just going to give you some statistics because I felt like, you know what, I got to set the stage. We got to talk about where we're at with this. As you can see, you know, ADHD, anxiety, behavior problems, depression are the most common diagnosed mental health disorders in children. I'm not telling any of you that don't know this. We continue to see the rise of this, and this was prior to COVID. And as you can see, this is, you know, ages 12 to 17 years reporting on the past year. When we look at this, 15.1 had major depression, 36.7 had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, 4.1 had substance use disorders. You know, the one that really caught me, because I read these data all the time, like, and it, you know, at times I'm like, oh, I know this, but I always look at that. The one that really surprised me is, I just recently read it, I added this, is recently, 2023, 57% of teenage girls feel persistently sad or hopeless, and nearly 1 in 3 teenage girls have seriously contemplated suicide. What's that all about, people? What's going on with our teenage girls? Social media. Say more about that.
The stresses of social media and seeing what everyone else is doing and thinking that that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe one parent and then the other parent is maybe that I wasn't invited to that, or that I was like, this is what's going on and I'm not here.
Yeah. You're stealing my next 2 slides, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. What else? What else? Like, when we look at this, what comes to mind? What do people think and feel when we see these type of statistics with our youth right now? What comes to mind? What do people think and feel? Yeah. Say more about that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's something that we need to get on top of because these statistics are not going down. They're continuing to climb. And what else? Because I know we've got some very knowledgeable people in here. What else when we see this? Yeah.
Why are they abandoned most of them are suicide?
Yeah. It's a really good point. Why is there feeling that that's perhaps the only solution to kind of what they're going through? Now, this is a saying that I tend to use for myself because it makes sense to me, is I believe that we're all doing the best we can with the resources we have in this given moment. And I think part of our job is you know, as adults, educators, parents, caregivers, is we need to be learning and teaching these skills differently to give people an idea of you can do things differently. Right? And we need to be knowledgeable about that and teaching these wherever we can, more than we are. Okay? So I spend a lot of time looking at these negative impacts of technology. It scares the hell out of me. It really does. I love technology. I use it. We're using it more and more. Yet, one of the things is that what we do know is companies have hired the best brain scientists in the world to make sure that the things that our youth are using is as addictive as possible. That is what they're up against right now. That is the challenge, right? You read about the people, and I've met some of the people that have worked for some of these companies. And one was telling me he was at a meeting and he asked them how many people in this room that create these things allow their children to use it. None of their hands go up. That's concerning to me when these are the people that are creating the products, yet they won't allow their own children to use it. Right? Today, 98% of 11-year-olds have their own phone. I believe that, the ultimate currency isn't gold, Bitcoin, it's our attention. Right? That is what people are trying to take from our children and from ourselves, is our attention and focus, and there's some serious consequences to that. As the slide says, is that this is the first time in our history where our attention is decreasing. Our attention is decreasing. So, and I think again, if that's the case, we're all over the board, right? There's, again, some negative consequences to that. If we have a mobile phone or computer next to us, we learn less. Any educators in here? Oh, yeah. So I think this is, and I tell college students, because I work at university, is the research shows is like, even if it's on the desk and we're not using it, the research shows that we learn less. Actually, what they're also showing too is that if we're not using paper and reading from books, guess what? We're not learning at the same level, right? So these are things to think about. Do I think that that's causing mental health? No, but what I am saying is that it is negatively impacting our learning. And the other is children aged 9 to 12 who keep their mobile phones on the bedside sleep an average of 21 minutes less. I'm going to get into the importance of sleep when it comes to mental health. Who in here sleeps with their phone in their bedroom? I know all of you, right? Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, it's one of the things. What I've done is when I looked at the research, I went to Walmart, I bought the ugliest, biggest alarm clock there is, and guess what? It works. Right? So I'm going to get into the reasons why, but that is part of the reason. Our youth, the minute they wake up and they look at that phone, that is when the first shot of cortisol is dumped into their body. That minute. And if they're on that all day, guess what? That's all is being dumped into their body. Now, stress is not a bad thing. Stress, there are some benefits of stress. Number one, it's unavoidable. Right? We live in a very stressful world. It helps you get things done. The problem that we're experiencing in today's world more than ever that is causing, from my perspective, a lot of mental health conditions is prolonged stress. Not having the skills or the abilities to turn it off. Right? So if we wake up and that's what we're experiencing all day, there are some consequences to that. Now, there's a wonderful book that I read many years ago, and it had a really catchy title. That's why I read it. It was called "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers." And when you dive into the science, what it was saying is that when zebras are out in the safari there, they see a lion, right? Their stress and anxiety should come on. It's a survival mechanism. It's rather eat or be eaten, right? I mean, or get away or be eaten. So until that happens, they get away or they get eaten, that stress response is off. But as soon as that's over, guess what they go back to doing? Crazy. Okay? We do not do that in today's world. Right? We are experiencing much higher levels of stress than ever before. And the phone is one of the major reasons. A survey of 4,000 young people aged 12 to 16, one in 7, 14% stated that they spent at least 6 hours a day on social media. 6 hours on average. The more teenagers sit in front of a screen, the more they struggle with feel alone. The biggest concern, this was a game changer when I kind of started to think about this. The biggest concern is that technology use is that it can impair young people's well-being by taking time away from other things that protect against mental illness. So just imagine that, right? 6 hours on that in today's world. Prior to those 6 hours, what were people doing more often? Yeah.
Outside.
Oh, this getting outside. Interacting with others. Yes. Yes. Right? What else? What else would they do at that time? sleep, right? These are things that build resilience, right? These are the things that build positive mental health. Right? These are the things that we know that when we don't do, there's consequences too. Right? So you're right. We're not moving as much. We're not connecting as much. We're not sleeping as much. We're not playing as much. Right? These are things that we need to just kind of get back to the basics. Now, we all know this. This is common knowledge. The problem is common knowledge doesn't always equate to common action. We need to be much more intentional and deliberate about this. I'll say that again. We need to be more intentional and deliberate about this, because if not, we will continue to do what we've always done. And wherever our attention goes, right, energy flows. If we continue to do what we've always done, we'll get the same results. So, I do want to talk about, there are factors that we need to be aware of when it comes to mental health, right? There's the individual. There is some genetic components. We know that race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, beliefs, knowledge, attitudes, coping skills at the individual level that impact mental health. We also know family. Family plays a role in this. The relationships with parents, caregivers, siblings, family, mental health, financial stability, domestic violence problem, these do have an impact when we talk about mental health. We need to be aware of that. The environment, right? Neighborhood safety, access to green space, healthy foods, housing, healthcare, population, natural disaster. And then society, social and economic inequalities. We know all these things are impacting health. This was actually from the Surgeon General's report that he wrote about the youth mental health crisis. It says these are things that we also need to be aware of. But we all play a role. We all play a role in this. And I would say is that we cannot just leave this mental health crisis to mental health professionals. Like at the university, people say, well, if there's that's your role. And I say, no. It is my role. It's all of our role. If we're going to change this, if we're going to move the needle, we need everyone working together to solve this. So the first is each of us play a role. So we look at all of us supporting mental health in the ways that we can. We need to have conversations about this. We need to be talking about this. We need to be working together as much as possible in community to move this needle. We need to look at and recognize that mental health is an essential part of health. It is. It's no different. We've got to stop looking at the stigma that, it's different. We all go in to see the doctor when we're not feeling well. We should be looking at it no differently if we're not feeling well mentally. I work with a lot of athletes. And, I always tell them, when you get injured, where do you go? They go to the training room. I said, are you worried about going there? No. Do you ever feel judged? No. So if you're struggling mentally, what's so difficult about going in and seeing one of us? There's a bit of that stigma still, but we've got to continue to talk about it. We've got to continue to normalize this. We've got to empower youth and families to recognize, manage, and learn from difficult emotions. So we have to learn from these things. We all will struggle. All of us. There is no one that is going to get out of this life without struggling. That is part of being human. But we need to kind of be working together to work through these things. Know that we can manage this and we can work through this together. Ensure that every child has high quality, affordable, and culturally competent mental health care. This, for me, is a big one, right? I have a difficult time when I hear or I see someone that wants to receive care and they don't. We need to do a better job of this. We've got to, we have some great people here tonight that are providing more services than ever before. But there have been times, and we all can sit here, I'm sure, and have stories where we've had someone that says, okay, I want the help, I need the help. We've gone to get them help, and it's not available. And so we need to be finding that. And not only do we need help, we need quality care. So when they do seek it, that they're getting qualified, competent individuals that can help them with what they're struggling with. And support mental health of children and youth in education, community, and childcare. I want the things that I'm going to be talking about to be talked about everywhere. If it was up to me, it would be K through 16. Mental health and well-being would be a subject area. No different than math, English, mathematics. I think that is the key. Where everyone has access to an education, that these skills are as important than anything that they will learn as they go on through life. So I like to talk about this model, and there is one statistic that we do not talk about in the mental health field nearly enough, right? And that's 100% of us. 100% of us in this room has mental health, right? 100% of us have it. We're somewhere on this continuum. I love to talk about this mental health continuum because we're all somewhere on it, from languishing to flourishing. And that may change. It could change day to day, hour to hour, year to year, but we are all on there. So that when I talk about mental health, we all have it. The other thing I love about this is that it really talks about that just because someone has a mental disorder or mental illness does not mean that they cannot, they'll never flourish in life. It's not true. There are many individuals that I know that I've worked with when they have the skills and abilities, have flourished in life, meaning that they're feeling and functioning well. The area that actually concerns me are the individuals that don't have a mental disorder, yet have very low positive mental health. Because they're one little, adversity away. And if they don't have the skills and abilities to manage, be resilient when those things happen, guess what happens? They go into the languishing area. So that's why it's important. Everyone on that continuum could benefit from increasing their positive mental health. So, I'm going to get into some good news. Okay? The good news is that we're going to be talking about resiliency, and resiliency can be cultivated. So no matter where we are, and we all may differ in our resiliency for a variety of different ways, it can be enhanced. It can increase. And again, I believe that we need to be more proactive than reactive when it comes to this. Right? Teaching these, upstream, front-loading this, in every situation we can, we should be teaching this. The reason why I think it's so darn important is this term in neuroscience is called neuroplasticity, and this is kind of a game changer. When I went to school many, many years ago, what I learned was the brain, by the time you're 8 or 9 years old, that's it. Good luck. That's what you're stuck with. We know that that's not true. The brain is malleable. We can change it. Right? It's not always easy, right? Because the brain likes to do what it's always done. In those tracks, the more we go down them, the easier it happens. But what we do know is that we can change. And that's by doing things differently. And the first few times, and I will say resiliency and well-being, very hard work. It's hard. I will tell people that right off the bat. This is hard work. You cannot buy the gym membership. You got to do the work. Right? But what we do know is when you do things differently, you start to form those new tracks, right? The brain can change. And then the snowstorm comes up and it kind of snows over on those other tracks the less we do. So the brain is changeable. I also believe that positive psychology is very important. And it's a field that I've spent a lot of time researching. And when I went to school, I studied what's wrong with people. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's been a lot of good things that have come from that. And we need to continue to do that. Positive psychology, on the other hand, they kind of look at it saying, there's also a lot of benefit to studying what's right with people. And I believe that that's really important. Because I like to say is if you're breathing, there's a hell of a lot more right with you than wrong with you. And I think we need to start to look at that. We need to see that the greatness and the goodness within each person. We need to help them discover, rediscover those. Because when that happens, again, there's a lot of good change that can take place. And again, these are learnable skills. What we do know is by learning these things, it does decrease the 2 mental health disorders that we continue to see on the rise, which is anxiety and depression. And again, any difference today can make a difference. So, what is resiliency? There's a lot of different definitions of it. The ability to bounce back after challenges and tough times, positive actions despite adversity, the work that reconnects developing our inner resources with our community. I like to just say it is. It's the inner resources, having the right resources at the right time to be able to work through that. Now, when we talk about resiliency, I like to say it's the bouncing back. And again, there's balancing with, where at times if we feel with adversity, we're just going to go with it knowing that, right, things are, we'll just stay there, we're going to ride it out. There's bouncing back, which is, right, we have adversity, and then we kind of go through that, and we may go down, but we come back right to that level. But I also think this isn't talked about enough, is bouncing forward. And what that is that when we face adversity, that many of us, and many of our children do, is they actually bounce forward. And there's a term that a lot of people don't hear about that I like to talk about, is that we all know what PTSD stands for, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. We all know that, everyone talks about that, but there's one thing that we don't talk enough about, which is called PTG. Post-traumatic growth. And there's actually a high percentage of people when they do face adversity that they experience post-traumatic growth. 9/11, for instance, there's many individuals due to that horrific experience did experience post-traumatic stress disorder, but there was actually a higher percentage of people that experienced experienced post-traumatic growth because of that experience, because they had the skills and abilities to kind of go through that. People that didn't like their job said, well, forget that, I'm not doing that anymore. There's many people that started charities that really changed, the world. Right? There's certain people where their friendships improved because of the adversity they experienced. I've experienced post-traumatic growth. I lost my wife over 5 years ago to cancer. It was horrific, terrible. It was, pain beyond pain. I still wake up and it's really difficult, but I will tell you I've experienced post-traumatic growth. It has made me a better human being. It's the reason why I do what I do. I get up and I honor her every day. Right? So we can grow from adversity. We have to talk about it. There's many people that don't even know that that exists. So they have to know that it's an option. So I believe that there's lots of ingredients here. Like, my biggest problem is that when someone says, you got an hour, man,